Hi, Spring Arbor students. Welcome to week 4 of MBA 661, Marketing for Managers. This week, we're going to be looking at analyzing products and services and strategies, looking at channel strategies and how to get your product out there and services out there. Product development, customer service, lots of things to look at this week. Supply chain management, brand and channel management, as well as always keeping an eye on integrating our faith and biblical principles into our business practices. Let's start with chapter 12. This is a real simple diagram of what we're calling the goods and services continuum. And you can see on here that, our goods range anywhere, or rather the things that we buy range anywhere from goods and services like clothes and food and that sort of thing, all the way to the other end of service. I'm taking a flight down to Tennessee in a couple of weeks. Going to be jumping on a plane, so that's a service that's going to be provided. But then there's those things in the middle, cell phones and that sort of thing that also would be on that continuum. This is an example of a classification framework for B2C, for products that you might sell or businesses would sell to consumers. So if you see me take a drink here, it's just because I'm getting dry. So when you look at this, there's 4 different categories. There's specialty products, there's unsought products, that mention funeral plans and that sort of things, nursing homes, insurances. But there's also shopping products, like I mentioned, airplane flights and that sort of things, computers, things that we shop around for. Then those things you got to have when you go to the grocery store kind of items. This is an example out of chapter 12 as well about how to connect this kind of a framework to how you might look at or how you might market. So for example, for those convenience products, again, that would be things like disposable items, snack foods, gasoline, that sort of thing. This would be an example of how you might think about marketing your product in those areas. The planning time involved to purchase gasoline, for example, is pretty short. Don't spend a lot of time doing that. The price is relatively low, although it does come and go and that sort of thing. But then compare that to some of those specialty products. Like if you're getting your taxes done, you're working with a finance person, or you buy a high-end car. The planning time involves a little more expensive, a little more extensive, and the price is a lot more expensive. It's usually pretty high. So that's how you might think about how to use this kind of a framework to decide how you might market. Chapter 13, we talk about brand definition. Oh, and by the way, I forgot to tell you, there's also a similar chart to this for the B2B type transactions, business to business transactions, and marketing that way too. Chapter 13, we're talking about branding and brand definitions, brand names, and brand is nothing more in terms of a definition than the name, the term, the sign, the symbol, the design, or some combination of all that identifies a product or a service to somebody just upon kind of recognition. It's a powerful influence on people's decisions, just that brand. And as we think about that, those brands, there's a lot of factors that play into why we select something. There's loyalty issues, like how loyal people are to your brand, or how loyal you are to a brand as far as that goes. There's trademarks, things upon recognition, you recognize immediately what something is just by the trademark or the thing that you see that sparks that, oh yeah, that's what that is. There's this thing about esteem. I remember you're gonna laugh, back in the 80s when Calvin Klein, or 70s when Calvin Klein jeans came out. They were just jeans, but they were esteemed, like they were something to get, something to have. And that spoke to differentiation as well, way back, just a simple example with jeans. But there's also this thing about packaging. I'm going to show you an example of a package. Hopefully my camera won't fritz out on me here. Let's see if you can figure out what this is. I'll do it slowly here so I won't go too weird on us here. All right, so you can kind of see that. I'll twist it around a little bit. Just based on this packaging, I'll bet you can tell what this is. It's a Kleenex box, okay, or a tissue box, right? Packaging makes all the difference. It helps us become aware of what it is that brand is. So you see that box in the store, pretty much you're buying Kleenex or tissues. All right, chapter 13, we also talk about product development strategies. I'm not going to go through this in depth, but make sure you study this in your text. because it's a four-way or a two-by-two matrix. All good frameworks are 2x2, by the way. So there's an example of an old product and a new product where you're busting in either to an old market or a brand new market. And there's some different things you can do, different strategies you can take to get involved in those. All right, let's look at this idea of adopters. You may have seen this before. It's a pretty interesting chart. And you'll notice that like when you have a new product and you're about to introduce it, you're going to have what we would call consumer, early innovators, if you will. Then you're going to have early adopters. Eventually, you're going to get to some critical mass and get early majority. And then you're going to have those hanger-oners who don't really want to, they're just going to wait to see what everybody else does. And then you're going to have the people that really hang back and don't do anything. There's some great definitions of these in your book. This is a pretty well-researched topic as well. But it does help you understand like where you would fit in once you introduce a product and how long it might take you or how many people might jump on board and that curve for how long they'll jump on board. One of those examples I was thinking about and wanted to bring to your attention was electric vehicles. So keep in mind the chart here, this adoption chart for in the area of EVs. I found an interesting stat out on policyadvice.net. And it says basically on a global scale, only 1 in 250 cars on the road are electric, which means, they're not being widely accepted yet. In the US market, it's about 2%. So clearly, way down here at the early start of this this consumer innovation, consumer adoption, we're way down here. I think it was Norway is like over 50% or close to 50%. So they're upwards in this category here already. So it's kind of country dependent as well. Anyways, interesting example of electric vehicles tied into this early adoption model. So you understand kind of where your product might fit into, your service might fit in as you introduce it. Whoops. All right, let's talk about marketing channels for a minute. There's a pretty good chart here laying out the different channels that that go from, if you kind of look at this as a supply chain example from factory to consumer or factory to business or even service off to consumers or business. I work in the staffing world, and so we provide a service. This is more our route. We work directly with both consumers, the people on the street looking for jobs, as well as businesses. Those are people who want to place people in jobs. And so our role is in the staffing world, we work directly with both of them, and we work as matchmakers, like we match them together. All right, that's kind of what we do. But I thought this was interesting too. The book didn't really talk much about this, but there's this new idea. Well, it's not new, but it's developing and exploding right now. And this direct-to-consumer marketing channels, DTC. And it's things like the Harry's Shave Club. They went out and bought a factory. They even tell you about that in their advertisements. They bought a factory and they're shipping directly to consumers. Casper does mattresses, I think. Chubby's does clothes, I think, for like overweight people and that sort of thing. But these are examples of factories shipping or building product and shipping directly to consumers, skipping retailers and wholesalers and even agents and brokers. Anyways, just an interesting connection there on marketing channels. Some things are developing and new that I thought you should know about. Over in chapter 15, there's this discussion on components of retail strategies. And this is a framework that tells us, here's kind of what's going on in the retail world. And I've made a note over here. This is very similar to resale strategies as well. Retail versus resale. Resale obviously is, used items being resold. Really popular right now. My wife owns an Etsy shop. She does this with jewelry, antique jewelry and costume jewelry that's older than 20 years old, I think. Poshmark does it for newer resale items. Then, of course, you have your brick and mortar places like Goodwill, Salvation Army, and that sort of thing. But this strategy for both retail works for both. This framework works for both retail and resale. And the reason I want you to see this is think about your own client organization and kind of who's their target market, and what kind of strategies if they're a retail customer, for example, a retail client, what are they doing in this area of, I like this idea of store atmospherics. You walk into a Goodwill today and it's a lot different than it was 10 years ago. Smells better. Most of them do. They're a lot different now. You walk into a retail store, brick and mortar, and that's like one of the things they focus on is the smell and the look and the feel of the business. So, all right. Anyways, that is all I wanted to show you right now. Make sure you're paying attention to those due dates, reminders up there above. And listen, remember, God is on his throne. He's always been there. He's always going to be. Have a wonderful day.